See this guy right here with the fire lantern? Huh? Yeah, if you nail him with a throwable weapon or kunai, he'll explode like a bomb. Miss your focused hearing from Tsushima? Well, I'll show you how to get it back as fast as possible. But you can actually just use empty sake jars to reveal enemies behind walls and other obstacles. Just pick one up and hold aim to scan around and reveal them. And you know those cinematic black bars you get while riding? Well, to get rid of them, all you have to do is click in the right stick on your controller. And actually, if you click it in again, you can cycle to a punched-in view that's more like the camera angle from Tsushima. And if you're missing your smoke bombs and kunai from Tsushima, you can actually get them in Yotei, but to get them quickly, you need to prioritize a couple particular quests in one specific region. In fact, the unlocks for smoke bombs, kunai, and focus hearing are all in the Teshio Ridge region, all the way at the northern end of the map. Now, Teshio Ridge isn't exactly the obvious next region to go to once you're done exploring the Yotei grasslands at the start of the game, and the enemies there are tougher. So I will show you exactly where to get those unlocks if you want them as fast as possible, but I'll also walk you through what I recommend doing before heading to Teshio Ridge, which includes picking up a few items you can actually use as substitutes for smoke bombs, kunai, and focus hearing before you get the real things. For the real smoke bombs and focus hearing, which is actually just called listening now, you'll unlock both by simply progressing the Kitsune main missions a few stages, which, by the way, I personally think is some of the best content in the game. For kunai, you can actually get them a bit earlier. They're still in Teshio Ridge, but they come from Hana, an NPC you'll find by starting the Winter Farms quests, which you can do before the Kitsune missions. You just need to find one of her contested farms right over here, and then examine the bodies outside to get started. But even after unlocking the kunai, I would help Hana clear at least a couple of her farms because then she'll give you the Charm of Hidden Blades, which lets you throw 3 kunai at once instead of the default 2. On top of smoke bombs, kunai, and listening, Teshio Ridge is also where you can unlock the Kusurigama weapon, various poison tools and ammo, multiple good armor sets, and you can loot a lot of shinobi steel here, which you need for some of the strongest weapon upgrades. So yeah, Teshio Ridge is where it's at, but like I said, the enemies are tougher up there. So here's how I recommend you get ready to get there fast. Start by just exploring the opening Yotei grasslands, where you'll want to make sure to pick up a few important unlocks. We'll come back to those in a minute. Then head to the Ishikari Plain to go after the Oni main quest. We'll cover a few key unlocks to get in the plain as well, but one reason to go there first is because you can loot a lot of Oni masks, which you need for weapon upgrades that will definitely help you out in Teshio Ridge. Once you're done getting a few key things from the plain, then you'll be ready to pretty much make a beeline for the ridge. We'll come back to those key things you want from the plain in a minute, but back in the opening grasslands, there's a couple early armor sets I want to make sure you don't miss, and you'll also want to unlock the dual katanas, as well as a really strong special technique for them. The first armor is Taro's, which gives you additional spirit gain, a max health increase, and resistance to fire and cold. You buy this from the boy trader Taro, but you need to find him first, and he doesn't have a set location. The game will eventually make him show up in a random encounter for you, but if you want to get the armor set as fast as possible, check in at any NPC camp you find around the grasslands because he can show up at a random one of those. Or you can just set up your own camp a bunch of times because he'll randomly show up there as well. Speaking of your camp, of course you can cook to get an extra spirit charge for 1 day plus a random perk. Fish always give a more powerful major perk, and mushrooms give a minor one, but either one will always give you the extra spirit charge. To stock up on fish, you can sometimes find multiple little fish traps right next to each other, like this triple one I found right next to the secluded lair campsite in the Tokachi range. But there's a better way to fish. Once you have the Yari spear unlocked, you can actually spear jumping fish. Just keep an eye out for these rippling pools and jab them when they jump. The Yari spear comes from Sensei Takahashi on this island off the coast in the Ishikari Plain, and it's one of the activities I definitely recommend prioritizing while you're there. The reach on this thing is great, and its focused attack, which is the attack each weapon does when you hold and release the heavy attack button, not only staggers enemies, but knocks them back as well. Plus, if you unlock the torrential slash technique, Atsu can actually launch forward to close a surprisingly large distance after knocking an enemy down for a powerful follow-up. The second armor to pick up early is the Bounty Master set, which is basically the Sarugami armor from Tsushima, which was one of the best. One of its big benefits is the massive increase to spirit gain you get when it's fully upgraded, but it also increases the perfect parry and dodge windows by a major amount. and gives 3 slow motion counterattacks when you get a perfect parry instead of the normal one. The trade-off is that regular parries are completely disabled, meaning if you try to parry a bit too early, you'll just get hit. So it's not for everyone, but even if you don't like to parry and you mainly just block and dodge, the perks for perfect dodges and spirit gain still make this a really good option. To get it, you need to complete a few bounties for the bounty hunter at the Yotei Shadow Inn, and then talk with him when he has no bounties on the board to get a special one which will reward you with the armor. But I think the best early armor for most people is actually the Spider Lily set. First, it gives enemies a higher chance to drop throwable weapons, which are really strong. You should definitely be using them whenever possible because they're basically free instant kills. But the Spider Lily armor also increases stagger damage dealt by all your weapons, and when you fully stagger an enemy, there's a chance stagger damage gets chained to surrounding enemies, which is really useful. The armor comes from the Spider Lily General Mythic Tail, which you can start at the Mysterious Gate just south of the Sejunai Woods in the Tokachi Range, just a quick ride from the starting grasslands. Unfortunately, we don't have a full transmog system for armor, so you can't equip one armor and use the look of another. But if you upgrade an armor and prefer how it looked at the lower level, you can still use that old look by opening up the armor in the gear menu, hitting the square right here to open the die selection menu, and then using L1 and R1 to cycle through the different upgrade styles at the very top of the screen. But while you're picking up bounties, you should absolutely prioritize the Crow Genzo ones specifically to get the Mitsubushi tool, which is basically throwing sand. This is the early substitute for Kunai I mentioned earlier, and sort of also smoke bombs. It doesn't fully stagger enemies like Kunai, and it won't let you trigger an assassination like smoke bombs, but you can use it to interrupt and briefly blind enemies, which is really useful for creating openings for yourself. One of the ways I use throwing sand is to give myself a moment during combat to drink sake to replenish spirit charges. And I've actually got a trick that lets you hold an extra sake with any loadout. The Charm of Abundant Drink lets you hold 1 additional sake, but I don't really like using it because I'd rather use slots for other charms. But because we now have loadouts and you can switch between them really fast, you could set up 1 loadout with that charm equipped, and then when you come across a full sake jar while you're already carrying the max, just quickly switch to the Abundant Drink loadout to grab it. Then you can switch back to your main loadout and the extra sake will stay in your inventory. Super handy, and you can get the Charm of Abundant Drink really early by heading to the Kutara Gambling Den down here in the Yotei Grasslands and playing a couple rounds of Zeni Hajiki. If you find Zeni frustrating, then you can go into the accessibility settings and turn on Power Shot Display to make it much easier. But as soon as you finish the opening of the game, you'll have a quest called the Way of the Dual Katana you can start over by Mount Yotei, and I would definitely recommend doing that early to get the dual katanas. And then I'd also definitely encourage you to go unlock the special mythic technique for them. On the regular katana, you've got the Heavenly Strike technique, which we all loved in Tsushima because it gives an unblockable instant stagger attack against any enemy for just 1 spirit charge. So you should definitely unlock that as well. But in Yotei, you'll notice for every weapon, the first node down to the right is a special technique, usually unlocked by a sensei or mythic tail. And for the dual katanas, it's Takezo's Dual Slash, which is basically an even better version of Heavenly Strike because it can hit 2 enemies and afterwards you can easily get in more damage with regular attacks. To unlock it, you need to complete a series of 5 duels against Takezo's followers at dueling trees. You'll find the first one over here just west and a bit south of your home. Once you do the first one, you'll get the myth card and you can just cycle through the little markers on it to reveal each of the other dueling tree locations. Complete each one and then head all the way south to the coastal dueling tree to get the Dual Slash technique. Now, I'm sure you've already learned you get a speed boost from riding through flower trails, and you might have also noticed you get a speed boost from jumping over obstacles and by looting flowers and resources like bamboo outside the flower trails. But there's a few more hidden ways to get speed boosts. The most useful one is actually just riding in shallow water, which basically acts like a flower trail. So you can just ride in rivers and along the shorelines of lakes for a free boost. Even cooler than that, if you get close to groups of wild animals like herds of horses and flocks of cranes, you'll get a boost as well, and the horses will even let you direct them for a little ways. Those speed boosts are good to use while you're tracking down altars of reflection, and I can't emphasize enough how important these are since they're literally the only way you unlock new skills, or techniques as they're called. There are plenty of altars in the game, and you might stumble across one once in a while, but to efficiently level up, you need to find them more quickly. The first way to get altars is by clearing the red camps on the map, which always have one. Then there are a bunch more you can find with the assistance of traveler maps purchased from the cartographer, who you can find at the inn in any region. And you definitely want to check in to buy these often. He restocks pretty much anytime you finish the last set you bought. If you're having trouble figuring out where to place the little maps, just wait 30 seconds and the game will give you a glowing white outline for the exact spot. On some displays it can be a bit hard to see, so make sure you actually wait a full 30 seconds and then look closely for the glowing box. But the next most important thing to find are definitely bamboo strikes to increase your max spirit charges. Sometimes the cartographer will have maps for these as well, but I actually found it more effective to use the shamisen to find them. In Tsushima, you had various types of guiding winds to locate different activities, but in Yotei, that system has been replaced with shamisen songs, and you need the Song of Spirit to find bamboo strikes, which you'll get from Master Hijiro's gardens in the northwest of the Yotei grasslands. To find other songs like the Song of Wellbeing for Hot Springs, I'll link a guide below. But I know a lot of people find the bamboo strikes frustrating with those quick button presses. So if you want to make them super easy, just go into the accessibility settings and toggle rapid button presses to simplify. Inari shrines are also pretty important to track down, because just like in Tsushima, they'll give you charms you can use to customize your build. But in Yotei, it's even more important to find them early because they give you upgradable charms, which get stronger as you complete their associated tasks. Fortunately, you don't actually have to have the charm equipped to level it up, but you do of course need to have found it first. That's why you want them early, so you can passively level them up while you play. I'll link a map you can use to easily find Inari shrines. The other important thing about charms is that collecting more will actually unlock additional charm slots and level them up so they can support equipping the more powerful major charms. So you should buy charms from Taro as often as possible, get a few from playing the Zeni Hajiki gambling game, check the gift altars at the inn in each region, and definitely head up the Mount Yotei shrine right at the start of the game to grab a handful up there. That's all the important stuff in the grasslands, and the last important thing to grab in the Ishikari Plain before heading to Teshio Ridge are bombs. Specifically blind bombs, but you'll get scorch bombs at the same time, which are definitely useful too. Blind bombs are sort of like smoke bombs, but you aim and throw them out instead of instantly popping them at your feet. However, you can throw them at your feet to pretty much use them like a smoke bomb. They definitely aren't as quick to use as regular smoke bombs, and you need to upgrade them before they'll let you get assassinations, but you can get them much earlier than smoke bombs by doing the Fighting Fire with Fire Sensei quest in the plain. You'll need to unlock the Yari Spear first, and then continue progressing Sensei Takahashi's quests a bit to get the bombs. Once you get those, you're pretty much ready to head north to Teshio Ridge and go after the Kitsune. The only other thing I would recommend doing first is completing at least 4 wolf dens. That'll unlock the Song of the Wolf, which lets you find more wolf dens easily, but more importantly, you can unlock 4 techniques that let the wolf help you out more. Wolf's Vengeance will let her stay around and help throughout a fight. Wolf Howl will give her a chance to show up when you use the Onryo Howl. Wolf Strike Summon gives her a chance to show up when hitting enemies with sake jars or throwable weapons, which you should definitely be doing anyway. And Wolf's Call will let you play the song to summon her to your side when you're near Yotei 6 camps. And if you don't like the wolf helping you out, you can adjust wolf appearances in the gameplay settings. Now, on your way to Teshio Ridge, you should definitely stop by Horosaru to get the Odachi from Master Yoshida. Just select the Saito Brothers main quest to head there. The Odachi, which is basically a super long katana, is one of the most useful weapons in the game. It's intended for big brute enemies, and there's no doubt it's great against them, but you can actually use it very effectively against most other enemies as well. Its key feature is the Bulwark stance, which lets you block and very safely build up the enemy's stagger bar. Basically, instead of the normal block button, Bulwark stance lets you hold down the heavy attack button to block, and then you can just release it at any time to shove the enemy back and apply a good chunk of stagger buildup. It's faster, safer, and easier than using the regular block button and following up with a regular attack. And you can just do it repeatedly until you completely break their stance, and then follow up with a couple of regular attacks to finish them off. By the way, my heavy attack button is the R2 trigger instead of the standard triangle button because I prefer the melee alternate control scheme, which you can find right here in the menu. Eventually, the Odachi even lets you mitigate blue and red attacks with a few of its techniques. So once you get a few unlocks for this thing and get the hang of it, it's really strong. I'm working on a detailed combat masterclass, but one of my biggest tips is to heavily utilize the Aya lightning strikes technique for the katana. These feel a bit awkward at first, but they're really good because they can interrupt any attack an enemy is doing. The trick is to hold the heavy attack button just until the moment you see your own katana hilt glint, and then release it. And don't worry about what the enemy is doing unless they're literally about to hit you because they'll get interrupted. Lightning strikes get especially strong with the 2 upgrade techniques directly below the main one. Similarly, the Tempest Strike for the dual katanas and Typhoon Kick for the Yari Spear are really useful as well, especially when you enhance them with some of the later techniques down the trees. I use those all the time on all types of enemies. And remember, a bit of throwing sand, kunai, or a sake jug to the face will create a safe opening for you to charge up these types of attacks. For those gold glint attacks, you want to try to counter before the gold glint gets larger and brighter. You don't want to wait to time it for when the glint gets bigger. You want to do it before that. And if you want to actually disarm the enemy, you need to have disarm counter unlocked in the Onryo attacks technique tree, and then make sure you hold down the heavy attack button for a moment before releasing it to ensure you're doing a focused attack and not just a regular heavy attack. For parrying, it's generally more effective to press and hold the block button when you go for a parry, as opposed to just tapping the button. This gives you a bit better chance of nailing the correct timing window, and of course leaves you in the full block stance if you miss the window, so you're a bit more protected. On the stealthy side, just like in Tsushima, you can roll up to enemies to quietly close the gap for an assassination. And don't forget the bow is basically a stealth weapon as well, especially since you can shoot through wall corners for extra stealthy shots. I'll have lots more combat tips in this video right here when it's ready. Until then, you're more than welcome to come hang out in my Discord server, and I also highly recommend the official Ghost community server. That'll definitely be the place to be for the Legends mode once it's out. Both are linked below, and I'll see you over in that next video in just a second.